Hey, this is Senator Justin Reedy coming to you from Annapolis here at the end of the ninth week of the legislative session. And it has been a crazy and insane week. And I'm not just talking about some of the bills we've been dealing with. It's a very busy schedule. The hot button issues from this week are many. By now on Friday, we have dealt with passing, almost ready to do final votes on a constitutional amendment that would enshrine abortion as a fundamental right, but really with no limits at all for any stage of pregnancy. And also, the same language in this constitutional amendment and would really put into judicial review or jeopardy any regulations on abortion clinics or abortion procedures, not just about whether or not abortion would be legal or not, which Maryland has made it extremely, we're extremely liberal on our abortion laws, and voters over 30 years ago passed a referendum to say that it would always be legal in Maryland. So there's no danger of the law changing if someone's concerned about that, even though I'm very pro-life and would like to see protections for unborn life. We basically have no real barriers to anyone getting an abortion already, but this constitutional amendment would actually make it to where even some regulations or restrictions on the process or procedures or safety could be called into question and taken to court. It's a very radical proposal, and spent a good bit of time questioning that. We tried to offer some amendments to add safety or lack of coercion into the language. Tried to amend the bill to make sure that what shows up on the ballot is what the law is. All of those were rejected by basically party line votes. Unfortunately, I don't know what could be wrong with adding safely or safety into the language, but that was rejected. We'll have final vote on that either Monday or Tuesday. We'll be having an extensive debate on that. We had extensive debate already, as I've shared some of what I was doing with that with questions. We also have SB 1, which is a really bad bill trying to re-regulate concealed carry permits and really put tons of restrictions and penalties back onto law-abiding citizens with their concealed carry permits. It would not restrict your ability to get a permit. It would keep that in place, the now may issue standard, as opposed to what was shall issue that was struck down by the Supreme Court. But it puts a bunch of restrictions on where you can exercise those rights. And while the bill has been heavily amended, it came in very radical, and it's been stripped down, and we were able to get some protection so that try to make sure people don't get unwittingly caught up in this. It's still going to be a restriction. I believe it will go to court. I actually think it's unconstitutional. I believe it will go to court and be overturned, but the General Assembly is hell-bent on passing it anyway. And so we did an extensive debate, amendments, and many other questions about that bill late this week. That final vote will be either Monday or Tuesday as well. You may be asking yourself, hey, Senator Reedy, I'm really concerned about, violent crime. I'm really concerned about safety in our communities. I'm concerned about the rising cost of living, and I'm concerned about hearing about schools like in Baltimore that are 23 schools in Baltimore not proficient in math, and around the state, other issues with education. Well, unfortunately, we've spent all this time on these very radical social issues or trying to relitigate what is the Second Amendment, but really nothing on stopping violent criminals. What we did have time for this week on the Senate floor was a bill that gives the Attorney General complete power over police-involved deaths. Right now, if a policeman's involved in a death, the state's attorney, your local state's attorney who you elected, can try the case. But in many cases, they will get someone in a neighboring county, a state's attorney from a neighboring county, to handle it, because you don't want to avoid those conflicts of interest because they work closely together. That happens all the time. There's been really no report of any problems. But the Attorney General, our newly elected Attorney General, who promised in his campaign he would not do this, has come in. He's barely been here. He's had a cup of coffee on the job, Anthony Brown, and he is trying to take control of all investigations and prosecutions or court proceedings within police-involved deaths. I jokingly said to some colleagues of mine, it seems like the only way to really go after criminals in this state is if we could get them all to swear in as police officers, and then Annapolis Democrats would be thrilled to try to prosecute them and put them in jail. So it's frustrating to me that we have all these great initiatives to really crack down on violent crime and get to the bottom of what's happening in some of our communities, and instead the General Assembly's focus has been on more sort of woke, anti-police type rhetoric and politics. I'm hoping that may change here in the final couple weeks, but for right now, it's not been good in that respect. Some good news that happened this week. I had a bill speaking of law enforcement, the General Assembly, years ago, we required and police wanted to be able to have every police department outfitted with body cameras for their officers. But body cameras the body cameras and the systems are very expensive. They're very expensive, particularly for smaller police departments like a Westminster or a Taneytown or Hampstead or Mount Airy. It's expensive, or even for Carroll County Sheriff's Department, it's a big expense. Because it's not just the cameras, it's also the storage, and there's a number of other things you have to do with part of these systems that can add to a lot of cost. But what we're allowed to do with our bill, and it's a bipartisan bill worked on with a Democrat delegate from Prince George's County, and with full support of our Maryland Sheriffs and Police Association, we're going to enable local jurisdictions to go on to a state procurement. When the state procures these kinds of services, will allow our local county sheriffs, county police departments, city police departments to kind of glom onto that procurement. So that will bring the price down for everybody and make it much more affordable. But we had to pass legislation to allow that to happen. So that bill actually passed the Senate floor unanimous this week. I'm hoping to have progress on a couple of my other legislative initiatives in the coming days. I will do my best to update you early next week, because a lot's going to happen, as I mentioned, with voting some of these major issues with guns and life and crime. I look forward to keeping you updated. Love to hear from you if you have any questions or concerns, and I hope you have a great weekend. Thanks a lot.